Welcome to Campus Consortium's EdTalk webinar series on perspectives on artificial intelligence strategies for student success and communication with Columbia University, Wharton Online, and University of Illinois at Chicago. If you have any questions now or during today's presentation, please type them into the chat box or questions pane in the Zoom control panel. We will begin shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Campus Consortium's EdTalk webinar series. Today's topic for the EdTalk is Perspectives on Artificial Intelligence Strategy for Student Success and Communication with Columbia University, Wharton Online, and University of Illinois at Chicago. Our presenters for today's session are Vicki Esposito, Senior Director, Client Services and Request Fulfillment at Columbia University. Dr. Szymon Machajewski, Learning Systems Coordinator, Learning Technologies and Client Service Solutions at University of Illinois at Chicago. Ivan Trivets, Associate Director, Educational Technologist at Wharton Online. And Dr. Carl Horvath, Chief Information Officer at LaSalle University. We will take questions at the end of today's presentation. Please enter the questions into the chat box or questions pane in your Zoom control panel. Now, without further ado, please allow me to present Vicki Esposito, Dr. Szymon Machajewski, Ivan Trivets, and Dr. Carl Horvath. Over to you, Carl.
You're muted, Carl.
Thank you very much, Rosie. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for attending today. We have an interesting talk about artificial intelligence by some leading schools, and should be interesting to see what each of them have done or plan to do. I see that we did have hundreds registered, including some of my peer institutions joining this EdTalk today. From around the United States and other regions. I see some of my neighboring institutions from the Philadelphia and New Jersey area. I see Rashmi from Arcadia University, Stephen from Wilmington University, Josie from East Stroudsburg. I also see Mark from Purdue University, Fabio from Bowie State University, and others from Carnegie Mellon, Georgetown, and Syracuse University. Welcome to all. So thank you for being here today. First, let me just introduce a little bit about Campus Consortium before we get started. I came to know Campus Consortium some years ago as a collaborative community that shared ideas and resources. Campus Consortium is a leading nonprofit education association with thousands of higher education and K through 12 school district members. established 17 years ago in 2003 by current chairman Anjali Jain, who worked with 14 founding higher education institutions, including Case Western Reserve University, Rochester Institute of Technology, and University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Campus Consortium established an executive advisory committee of higher ed leaders and CIOs to guide its mission, and this structure is still in place today. What I like about the consortium is that it's guided and influenced by a community of my peers. Campus Consortium reacts to the needs of the education community and assists where it needs help the most. Membership includes both large and small institutions that are involved and want to help each other. I've been able to implement projects at my institutions that would never have been possible without this association. I've also benefited from the collaboration and relationships of its members. There's no need to reinvent the wheel when you can leverage a community of peers who have addressed similar projects and problems. The Campus Consortium mission is to serve the underserved by providing grants and underwriting to projects that can benefit students and align with institutional strategic plans for all members. And today we have some of those members who have worked and collaborated on artificial intelligence projects. It's an opportunity to work with other institutions by joining the consortium or being part of the consortium that empowers you as an institution and helps you achieve things that you might not normally have been able to. Here's a recent grant that was awarded to Lemoyne Owen, specifically related to AI chatbot and cybersecurity grant recipient, but particularly the AI chatbot discussion that we will have today. In looking out at the audience also, I do see that we have several other attendees besides educational institutions. Campus Consortium is funded and supported in part by its partners, and we couldn't do what could be done to help all the schools without the partners. Joining today, there is Oracle, Google, and Hobson's, and thanks to the Campus Consortium sponsors, they make it possible to help our members. I'd like to talk a little bit about what an EdTalk is, so you can orient to what we're about to discuss. EdTalks are interactive, informational, and educational talks that address strategy, issues, and needs that affect member institutions. As a member, I can suggest topics that matter to my institution and often find many others that have the same interests. For example, this talk resonated with me after meeting with these schools, and we developed out interesting talk to highlight what each school is doing. This gives me interesting ideas and possibly the ability to implement this in my institution as well. Who better to advise and provide ideas in a time of pandemic disruption than the schools who have already taken on the artificial intelligence projects and the chatbot projects that we will talk about very shortly. Here's two of the grants. This is one of the grants that was recently awarded. These are directly related to the topics that we'll talk about today. There's a COVID-19 artificial intelligence chatbot grant that addresses immediate needs and concerns, and then a more developed artificial intelligence grant that has much broader ability and capability for institutions. So let me start off by introducing today's first speaker so we can learn more about artificial intelligence and chatbots. Dr. Szymon Machajewski is a gamification Sherpa. He's a digital educator focused on student engagement with research on peer instruction and gamification. He specializes in building online learning adoption. Dr. Machajewski serves as Senior Learning Systems Coordinator at University of Illinois at Chicago and contributes to collegiate open source initiatives. His work was recognized in 2011 with the Blackboard Catalyst Award in Innovative Code Development. He was further recognized in 2013, the Award for Faculty-Led Service Learning Project in Mobile Development. In 2014, he earned an Exemplary Online Course Award for Instructional Design. In 2018, he won the Kroner Cup in a coding hackathon with Amazon AI. He also holds a U.S. patent in e-learning technology. While teaching since 2003, in 2019, he was recognized with a national award for optimizing student experience. So without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Machajewski.
Carl, thank you so much for this generous introduction. Let me introduce my university first. University of Illinois at Chicago, or UIC, is a public research university with about 33,000 students in 16 colleges. 1 in 10 Chicagoans, so people from Chicago or living in Chicago, with a college degree is a UIC alumnus. Approximately 1 in 8 Illinois physicians is a graduate of UIC College of Medicine, which is the nation's largest medical school. 1 in 3 Illinois pharmacists would be a graduate of College of Pharmacy at UIC. Half of all the dentists in Illinois are graduates of UIC's College of Dentistry. So we're proud of our heritage as a university, and we wanted to make sure that we can support our students, our faculty in the unique, very clinically based subjects that they teach. And so we looked into AI, artificial intelligence, because it is autonomous, because it continues to practice machine learning, so it gets better as time goes on. It uses natural language processing, which means that we are able to discover questions that students perhaps are only comfortable asking a chatbot. And they can ask questions in many different ways, and then the AI is able to match the human language with intent that we designed for. Just to give you an overview, some years ago, when computers first were going in the commercial life, they were command line based. So Unix command line then required that you knew the commands to type them in. Later, the GUI desktop came about. So we have point and click icons. And of course, this was a big development. Many more people were able to use computers. And then we have revolution with web technologies, web pages, then touch and mobile interfaces. So now we arrive at a conversation as the interface. So either voice or text, it's a conversation as an interface with our users. And so that's why a chatbot. And we were very happy to investigate multiple technologies. As a university, with our IT office, we started to develop with Google Dialogflow. We're very impressed with this technology and started to develop in-house chatbot, quickly finding out that really the costs of in-house development are high and the speed is not as satisfactory. So we partnered with Unified, which is part of the consortium, of course, but Unified offers a Google Dialogflow chatbot for various systems, including the project that we were very interested in. Now, Google Dialogflow itself allows us to connect to multiple devices, not just a chatbot, but we can integrate audio assistants, Facebook Messenger, telephone systems. So in the future, we look at expanding from the chatbot alone. As a prerequisite for success in our research, we found that a well-defined scope for the project is very important. So our scope was defined as FAQ portions, so documentation questions about the learning management system, and then the LMS integration, so students being able to talk with our Blackboard Learn system and interact with its data. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Carl. Thank you. So the first phase of our project, the KB or knowledge base integration, this is completed now and we are in the production stage. This was very important to us. We wanted to have 24/7 access to curated content in our knowledge base, in addition, of course, what Google search can provide. And so we were able to integrate the chatbot with our open source KB system, as well as help.blackboard.com. So if users type in, how do I copy my course? Well, that is going to be connected to our local knowledge base but they also can type in, how can I be a better online student? And that information will come from blackboard.com. Let's go to the next slide. So the main part of our project, of course, is going to be enabling interaction with the LMS. And just for a second, if you consider the role of the LMS today, it is huge. Now that all courses are online, the LMS isn't just the center of academic activity as it was before the virus. But today, really, the LMS is the focus and center of most departments' efforts. And so I'm sure our university isn't the only one, but vendors like Blackboard, Canvas, and others are reporting 4 times or more usage of the LMS. And so this is why it was so important for us to be able to integrate the chatbot with the LMS. We are using REST API, which means that when you chat with a chatbot, your session is authenticated, and you have the live data that's coming out of the Learn system. There's no delay. We're able to answer questions such as, how many assignments do I have that need to be graded? And so instructors certainly are able to find that information, but it requires multiple clicks through the LMS system. And so the chatbot allows them to be more efficient and work across multiple courses. Or students can ask, what are my grades, or what homework do I have due? And so looking at the multiple devices that this technology can reach, we know that when students are shut at home, they don't necessarily have laptops or desktop computers. All they might have are additional devices like an audio assistant or maybe a telephone. And so we want to open up the LMS so that they can interact with their gradebook, with their due dates over these devices. So we might create a situation where a student comes up to a refrigerator and asks, Alexa that's embedded in the refrigerator, hey, when is my exam? And so those are the kind of conversations that we're planning on enabling, and certainly a very exciting time in development of technology.
Thank you, Simon. I just want to say we have a poll question that has come up here. And today's poll question is, where are you on your AI journey at your institution? Exploring, deep dive, implementing, or enjoying the benefits? We'd love to hear from you about that. As the poll starts filling up, Simon, just a quick question about in terms of the way that you've implemented the chatbot and the emphasis on the learning management system. Has this been a critical addition as far as giving it personality, organization, or structure? And has it changed the way that faculty interact with students?
That's a great question. And again, we've completed so far the first phase where we can make the documentation about the system and the help questions available to faculty. So we're still in the development phases of the Blackboard Learning integration. In fact, working with Unified as a vendor means that any other schools that are coming behind us that will partner with them will be able to benefit from this development. But certainly we recognize that faculty as well as students are a diverse population. And as faculty who are totally in class are now being onboarded to online, we have to reach out with multiple devices, with multiple ways of creating these interactions, because faculty simply are not all using the system the same way. Some adopt the LMS in a very generic way by just providing videos, and some do it holistically where they have interactions. And so that's likely what we will see with the adoption of the chatbot as well.
Yes, sounds like it can really be a critical part of how empowering faculty and also students, if it's used correctly. So the results of the poll just came in. Where are you on your AI journey at your institution? And overwhelming is 80% of people are exploring right now. So looks like this is a timely presentation. Yeah, there's a lot of people as we've had to make that shift from on ground, especially the on ground institutions, to online. There's a great emphasis now on the online experience that will not change. You know, we're never going to go back to 100% not having 100% online instruction available. So I know that chatbots are going to be important teaching tools. Thank you, Simon. Let me introduce our next speaker to talk about his experience at his institution. I would like to introduce Evan Trivets. Evan is an Associate Director, Educational Technologies with Wharton Online at the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. In this role, he works to make high-quality business education available to learners anytime and anywhere through the use of technology. His current focus is on digital badging, accessibility, and leveraging technology to drive learner engagement online. Evan has worked in higher ed instructional technology roles for close to a decade at institutions in Baltimore, Boston, and Philadelphia. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Evan Trivets, please.
Thank you, Carl, for that kind introduction. And thank you for everyone for attending today. So I thought, just like my colleague Simon here, let's start with who are we? What is Wharton Online, in order to kind of set up what the problem we were trying to solve and what that solution was. So as Carl mentioned in my bio, Wharton Online, we design high quality, relevant business education to learners wherever and whenever they need it online. So if they are non-degree students who are coming to us, it's continuing professional ed courses that they can come in and take. And I'll get into a little more detail on a couple of next slides about that. But one key takeaway is we are a team of 10. Sorry, can you go back, Carl? One slide. We're a small team. We're a team of 10 within our larger executive education division at the Wharton School. And Wharton Online was created roughly 5 years ago as sort of in the mindset of entrepreneurship and a startup mindset. So we were kind of created from the ground up to create this organization. Next slide, Carl. And just a few facts that kind of put into scope the breadth of our operation. So we have now slightly more than 65 courses, maybe around 67. And in the 5 years that we've been in existence, we've had nearly 2 million learners go through all of our courses. So keep in mind, a team of 10 now. Prior to that, it was maybe 5 people supporting, a globe of 2 million learners taking our courses. And our courses can really be thought into 2 separate buckets. We have our open enrollment courses, which are the B2C, kind of your traditional MOOCs that you might have taken online on Coursera or edX, and we also host some of those on our own platform using Canvas. And then we also do courses, custom courses on our Canvas for corporate clients. Next slide, Carl. So the problem we're trying to solve, besides helping learner engagement and support, was partially an internal one. So as a small team, how did we handle prospective learner inquiries and those kind of ITSM kind of thoughts of tier 1 support, while also continuing to grow that startup business? So our main goal, and currently, is to free up staff to focus on strategic projects, things like course support, and also to continue that entrepreneurial spirit of experimenting with our courses, our learner engagement, and just that general good teaching and learning experience within our courses that our students need and want. The next slide, Carl. So our solution, just like Simon, and you'll hear from Vicki later, was to start with implementing a chatbot to try to take some of that support need off of our small staff so they could handle those higher level projects and help our learners get answers when they need them 24/7, as Simon had mentioned. So we did an LMS, or we're going to do an LMS chatbot, but we currently are live with our web chatbot. And the reason we went with the web chatbot first is, like Simon said, to keep your project in a focused scope. Most of our inquiries were coming from prospective learners and not current learners. So we felt implementing a chatbot on our website to handle those questions, which are typically like, what are the structure of your courses? How much do they cost? very logistical related questions related to someone who's interested in taking our courses. And we also decided to go with Unified to implement our project, and we are using their FAQ Yoda bot. And you can see a screenshot on the right. We have named ours Tam, and we'll kind of get into that personality kind of concept later. Next slide, Carl. So we started implementation, the project, beginning of January of this year. And as I mentioned, we focused on the persona of a prospective learner as our phase one. And we started with really thinking about what are those questions we are commonly getting. So we had to create that taxonomy and what those answers would be in that light of FAQs. And we worked alongside Unified project team to implement a test system on our WordPress site. And as Simon also mentioned, we have that nice interface on the back end with Google Dialogflow in order to create those intents and feed in our FAQs as we either see them in existence of questions that are commonly asked or ones that we know have been emailed to us in the past. We could create those and easily get them into the Google Dialogflow. So as we did the project and when we subsequently went live in the end of March of this year with the web chatbot, these were 3 key considerations that our team kind of noticed that might help someone else thinking about implementing something as a web chatbot to think about. And one of those is what I call personality versus robotic. Do you want to go on one far end of the spectrum and have it be what you might traditionally think of? It's just answer question, right? Very robotic. The person's just getting kind of short to the point answers. Or do you want to build in a little bit of personality so that the person may open up more and ask questions they may not have asked to something they see as just a bot? And one thing that we did notice, we went to the far end of personality initially, and to the point where some people, based on the conversations on the back end that we could follow, were actually thinking they were talking to a person. So we kind of had to scale back and come to the middle a little bit in order to maintain and nix in the bud anyone getting frustrated with the answers they were getting, so that they know up front they're dealing with a digital assistant, like as we call it, but that they should be able to get the answers that they need when they need them. Another one was what I call redirects versus having that conversation. Do you want to build in FAQs that are simply just saying, in order to get answer X, visit this website, and just point them somewhere else? Or do you want to have the conversation where they're kept in that bucket of the conversation and they're getting the answers they want when they need them in that one chat session, which is ultimately how we designed the chatbot and build it. So the people are staying in the conversation, they're able to ask their question and get it in the form of a conversation. And then the big one to me was the level of support for maintaining the bot. And I'll be honest, up front, when I started it, I didn't think of this ahead of time, where just because you're implementing a piece of technology or artificial intelligence doesn't mean that once it's live, it's going to just run on its own, even though it can kind of do that machine learning and learn as you go. There still has to be that human element in the back end that can kind of see any answers that may be wrong or may be misleading, can monitor them, can correct them, can also partner with other parts of your organization to maybe bring in answers they need to have prospective learners get, and you can kind of monitor on the back end. So really that, to me, anyone thinking about implementing a chatbot, that is one to keep forward and always be thinking of as you're designing your dialogue flows, your web chatbot, its use. It's just how are you going to maintain the support of that piece of technology as you move forward. Next slide, Carl.
All right. Here's our next poll question. Where do you envision utilizing AI on your campus most? IT help desk, enrollment and admissions, student services, financial aid, HR, finance? Evan, just interesting, you implemented the chatbot on the web, and you're about to move into the area where Simon has utilized a chatbot for academic, for teaching and learning. What do you see the key differences between those two implementations would be, and how, what are the different benefits that you would get from between the two?
I think in our next phase, as you mentioned, the LMS chatbot, it's just going to be the types of questions that are answered and the needs of the person asking them. Right. Our first phase was focused on people who are not in our courses and they're not in that learning environment yet, which to me seemed easier to implement first, kind of that low-hanging fruit, because we already have a lot of that information dispersed all over the internet, on our website, other places where we could easily pull in the FAQs. The LMS one is going to take a little more consideration to design to get our demographic of learners different. They're typically working adults. Some of them, depending on the program they're taking, maybe C-suite level. What kind of questions are they going to ask in the learning context? So those were the key differences to me.
Right. So implementing something like this really helps get it started anyway, right? And then you modify from there, because there are other applications, I guess, like according to this question is, there's multiple places across the university where it could be used. And I guess the questions are just really pouring in now, especially with the COVID situation, where, there's not always somebody there to answer the phone, and we need timely information because information changes constantly in that, especially during the COVID response. But also, applying it to teaching and learning just a little bit different. So thank you for that. Here's the results of the polls. Where do you envision utilizing AI on your campus most? Well, it looks like we have somewhat of a, equal distribution here between these areas. IT help desk, enrollment and admissions, and student services look like they're running about neck and neck there. Financial aid, HR, and finance a little bit lower. There are applications such as in your student accounts receivable office where this could be handy, or financial aid, with the many questions that do come in, but definitely applications in these other areas. So it looks like across several areas that, artificial intelligence and chatbots can be of use. All right, thank you, Evan. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, which is Vicki Esposito. Vicki has been with the Information Technology Client Support Services Group at Columbia University for the past 8 years. Prior to joining Columbia, she spent 19 years at the New York Stock Exchange. Most of her career has been focused on desktop support, service desk, and continuous service improvement. Vicki is currently working with several groups across Columbia implementing chatbots. So Vicki, without further ado, please take it away.
Great, thank you, and thank you for having me here today. If we could move to the next slide, I think we're going to ask a poll question. So while everyone's looking at that, I'll just tell you a little bit about Columbia and how we became involved in this. But I'm part of the Central IT group, and several groups across campus were looking into chatbots and different vendors. So we stepped in to assist these groups with building and implementing their bots. We actually went live with a bot for the Student Financial Services group just last week using Unified Yoda. So that's what Evan had said he was using. And I found it interesting that last poll question, only 25% of the people said that they were looking to implement this for financial aid. And we actually went live last week. So I wasn't sure if we were going to be live with it, but we did. And as we get further through these slides, I'll tell you a little bit about some of the findings I'm seeing on that. The bot is dedicated to answering student financial questions. But what I really wanted to touch base with today is on the bot itself, regardless of what group is implementing it. So if we could just move to the next slide. So, oops, I think you went one slide too far on me. Yep, thank you.
I'm sorry, Vicki. Let me just quick share.
No, that's okay.
Just wanted to quick share the results of the poll.
Sure.
By using a chatbot instead of a person to provide answers. And I know this is what you're going to get into, so this is great feedback as you start talking about this. Do you think you could reduce staff responsibility and increase efficiency and reliability for student questions? Yes, most people said yes. A small portion of people did say no, interesting, and then some are maybe. So let's hear what you have to say and see how that might, help us understand best how to use a chatbot.
Great. And since 80% of the people in the first poll question said they were exploring, I'm hoping some of these slides help you out a bit. So we tend to say QA for questions and answers, and I like to put the F for feelings. So we all were thinking about it as an automated way to answer repetitive questions, which it is, but the bot is an extension of whoever is currently answering those questions. So perhaps you have a service desk who's currently handling this responsibility. A chatbot can make or break the relationship with the customer or the user, just like a bad employee can. So it's really important that you get it right. And, Evan had touched base on whether or not you want people to think about this as being the personality or the robotic of it. So it's going to be important. If we could go to the next slide. So consider your chatbot as another employee. It's an extension of the group or the groups who currently answer these questions. Think about the questions you normally ask on an interview when hiring somebody to do this work. What is the personality of your current employees and team? And how will this new employee or the new bot fit in? How are they going to handle difficult customers? How and when are they going to escalate issues if needed? Right? So these are things that you would normally either interview on or train people when they were brought in to answer these questions. So you have to think about the same thing with the bot. You don't want the bot to just frustrate a customer. You want them to be able to move just like a person would to somebody who can answer the question. Go to the next slide. So once your chatbot's out there, do your customers know this is a chatbot? Do you want them to know or make their own assumptions? Think about sensitive issues. I'm assuming that most of your customers will be students. So what happens if they tell the bot that they're lonely or sad or hungry? Are you going to answer these questions? How sensitive is your campus to these types of situations? And does your legal team need to be consulted? Right? Is simply responding with a link to a website or a number to a hotline sufficient? These are things that we thought about, and then as we dug deeper into it, different groups had different feelings about how they should respond. So across your campus, you may want to have a similar answer to some of these questions, or perhaps a certain group, maybe the IT service desk isn't going to get questions like that, but maybe your student services group is, and there may have to be two different types of answers. The next slide, please. So think about how you're going to update and maintain the bot once it's in production. I would suggest that you add this into any testing plan you have. A lot of times we're testing the bot, but we're not testing what we're going to do in the end, right? We're not testing what happens when somebody asks a question that we don't have an answer to. How's that going to be handled on the back end? As questions start coming in, somebody needs to review them for accuracy, at least in the beginning, right? And how are they going to add items, especially repetitive questions that perhaps you didn't think about? And it's important to understand the lingo. So we've been using words like questions and answers, but if you notice, Szymon had used the word intent earlier. So in the chatbot world, they use words like intents and utterances. So it's important that when you're working with vendors, and Unified has been very great. We've worked with them with understanding the lingo, because this is new for most of us. And again, 80% of you said you were exploring it. So it's important to really understand the chatbot world. What do they mean by an intent? What do they mean by an utterance? How is the bot going to learn, right? If you say password reset versus reset password, is it going to understand that? So it's a little bit different from the previous two presenters. I wanted to make sure that people had some, specifics about how we thought about the chatbots themselves and the personalities of them, and how they were going to actually be an extension of the people who were answering the questions today, and not necessarily a separate piece of the group. So going back to the poll question, it was kind of split, I think, Carl, if you know what we had asked. So I think it really depends in the beginning, and I think Evan touched base on this a little bit. In the beginning, you don't realize how much you need behind the scenes to make sure that this is working right. Until you have some kind of, transitional process where somebody's keeping an eye on it and making sure that it's getting updated and you're getting the proper updates from different groups across campus, it's important that you don't automatically assume that you're going to be able to move people to other jobs, or perhaps even, reduce headcount just because you put this in place, because there is a lot behind the scenes that you really need to pay attention to. I hope that helps.
Yes, that does, and Vicki, it's also helping, I think, to answer a little bit more efficiently sometimes if you train it right. I mean, that's the thing, is it having the right information. It can really be helpful and decrease the repetitive work that a lot of staff that's limited with limited time, they just don't have the time to do it. So this could be very effective in that way.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Good insight from all three presenters. Just kind of want to pull together some of these outcomes right before we get to the questions. Actually, we could get to some of the questions, because here's an interesting one here from Todd Vasquez. And I think that we actually even started answering it. AI seems like it could be especially helpful in creating leverage for smaller universities with smaller budgets. Do you have any success for smaller universities taking advantage of AI? I know some of the panelists started answering this. Could some of the panelists address this question for Todd?
I could go ahead, Vicki.
I was going to say, when you're talking about a smaller group, we've rolled it out for financial aid and financial questions, but it's not necessarily a small group. That really impacts, it could impact anyone across campus, and we have quite a few schools that are part of Columbia. So I'm not so sure I can give an answer on a smaller school there, but maybe Simon can.
I was just going to mention that Unified, again, our partner, does provide some success stories on their website. I just put the link in the chat. And there you can select schools with less than 5,000 students, and then the different bandwidth. So certainly it makes sense that smaller schools with maybe smaller budgets would want to follow in the steps of organizations that did some of the development. And I think that the partnering with Unified here is a really good fit.
All right, thank you. Another question we have from our audience is, how does your system handle a problem it does not know the answer to?
So with ours, and this is, I think, more of a functionality of the Google Dialogflow and the Unified Yoda. You can build in just default fallback intents for one, where you can create different, responses based on if it doesn't know the answer, if it doesn't have what's called an intent to match to. And then after the fact, this comes into that human element or support in the back. You can see how many times the conversation had an intent that could not be matched. And then you can quickly connect the dots and match it to one that does exist and would be the correct answer, or create a new intent to match it. So for future conversations, it would provide that correct answer. But for the most part, if it doesn't know the answer, it's going to give something that we fed it to say, like, sorry, I don't know the answer, rephrase your question, for example. That's what ours currently does.
All right, thank you, Evan. Another question is, how is the LMS chatbot different than, say, an Alexa interface?
I'm not sure.
My Alexa just responded to this by saying I'm not sure. But seriously, though, it is true that there are multiple skills, both for the Google Assistant and the Amazon Assistant. However, in this instance, we get to build the conversations, and it also interfaces with our help desk system. So these are a better match. So, for example, what is an example of conversation? A very popular one. I have a problem with my password, and you can express that in so many different ways. Just by saying the word password. And our bot will first ask, well, did you forget your password? And the answer yes or no then leads to another, here's how you reset your password, or here are some suggestions if you do remember the password. So the troubleshooting that happens through the chatbot can be customized to the organization because you're building the conversation. And certainly for most universities, the password conversation with the end user is a tremendously important support system, and the bot is able to clarify it right away by asking the question, did you forget your password? And that just cuts the conversation and into meaningful pieces and creates a good experience for the end user.
Thank you, Simon.
If I could just call, sorry, if I could just, I couldn't get off of mute quick enough to answer the previous question, but I just wanted to say that we have two situations that we're working on. So one, similar to Evan, you put in what you want the bot to tell the person if it doesn't know the answer. And a couple of times we have things like, can you rephrase it? But ultimately we'll say, hey, you may want to contact this group. Here's their email, here's their phone number. But we're in the process of working on the bot for our IT service desk. And that bot is actually going to say, I'm going to transfer this chat to a live agent. And we have that ability to transfer them over. So that is something that you can do also. And again, Unified Yoda, we've used that and we've tested it out and it's working fine.
So it can actually field some initial questions. When it hits something it can't help with, and it'll get you to a live agent who can explore further.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Great. All right. Thank you for that. We have another question. This is from James Adamson from University of Hawaii. How much time is spent on deployment, upgrading the software, and can it be deployed on AWS?
If I may perhaps start, AWS being the Amazon technology, Amazon has its own Lex system that allows you to build a chatbot. So we are working with a Google application stack, and it is all SaaS. So it's basically hosted and managed, upgraded automatically. So when it comes to technology upgrades, the web component for the chatbot is managed by Unified, and so they are working also on the upgrades for that. As far as we're concerned, it's also SaaS. So really the entire technology or upgrades are out of our hands. We certainly will be testing and looking at the releases, but probably as most SaaS platforms, we agree to all the changes that Google decides on and just go with it.
Carl, you're on mute.
Another question from Rick Simmons. How many FTEs does it take to maintain the environment, or what % of time for an existing FTE is needed?
So I think I touched base a little bit on this, but I think in the beginning you really need to have dedicated people. I would say, and I could be wrong, I guess it depends on how much you're doing. We took 2 dedicated people from the service desk to work on the bots, and that's not counting the people within the financial group that dedicated time to it. So if I had to put a number on it, I would say there were 3 full-time people working on it to get it up and running. After that, it should be just a portion of somebody's role just to maintain it. Again, it's going to be more time in the beginning and less as you get that process down pat.
Our situation was almost identical to what Vicki just said. During the project and implementation, we had 3 full-time staff working on the project alongside the unified project team. And then currently, post go live, you're looking at it. It's just me. It's part of my role now, you know. So during the week, it's just daily workflow. It's just kind of check in on the bot, correct those, you know, unanswered questions, and write intents, and just monitor everything.
I think it's fair to say that during implementation, there's some web design that's also involved in how do you embed the bot in a specific place. We embedded it on the login page of the LMS, also inside of the course, and in what's called base navigation in Blackboard. So that work probably is done once, but then has to be checked on over time. So some web development, and probably the interest of communications team to make sure that the branding is maintained. At some point, you fill out this sheet for Unified, provide the icon for the bot, the name for the bot, and so those elements, including the colors of the bot, is something that the implementation calls for.
Thank you for that. Another question from Stephen Norgard. Is the bot able to provide answers based on information from your student information system? For example, what courses do I qualify to take next term? And I think some of you answered that question already in your presentations.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak in theory. I believe that would be possible. We don't leverage an SIS for our unique kind of use case as Wharton Online, but I could imagine so. Maybe Simon or Vicki has more.
Yeah, so we haven't incorporated it specifically with the students to be able to get to their records. We've only provided them links to be able to get to, say, the student information system to log in. So we are working behind the scenes to try to create that. You know, obviously you need to be able to authenticate people. So we're taking baby steps with doing that right now.
Right, from what I know about the chatbot, the bot is able to provide answers from the student information system, provided that the student information system has APIs, you know, and is able to integrate, which most of them are. So, you know, if you're leveraging it for your learning management system, you can certainly use it for your student information system. And especially if, you know, you have financial aid or student accounts receivable, you're using it to access information, it's going to access, you know, like how much is what's the balance on my bill? You know, it's going to be able to access that information, and that has been implemented in other schools.
Yeah, it's definitely doable. I know that we haven't done it yet, but you know, you don't want somebody coming there and saying, how much do I owe? And all you're going to say is, well, go to this website and log in and you'll find it, right? It's a little bit helpful, but it's not completely helpful. So the integration, you should definitely think about putting it in.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just to follow up on the AWS problem, the Unified Bot is deployed in AWS by default, and the solution is based on Netflix OSS microservices. So to answer that question. Another question from Rick Simmons is, what metrics are you using to track successes and effectiveness? Or what do you plan to do to
So
track
our Unified Bot just went live last week, but Unified does have metrics built in that provide you with the types of, you know, how many questions came in, how many were successful as far as the bot is concerned, how many need to be looked at. It even has little indicators on whether something is like very important for you to look at, or, you know, something that needs to be adjusted. So Unified has that built in.
Right.
Since we just went live, I haven't really thought about other things that I need, but it's very helpful right now for us to be able to see what kind of intents we have to add.
kind of leverage the the metrics inside of the chatbot that you're using, and so there is reporting available, which is good because it measures the effectiveness. Well, thank you all for answering those questions. We had several questions. The ones we don't get to, we'll make sure we follow up and get those answers for the audience and get them out there. Essentially, these are the high points of the Really benefits of using artificial intelligence and a chatbot. I just wanted to also highlight that these benefits can be yours in collaborating with schools like Columbia, Wharton Online, University of Illinois, Chicago, with peers like this who are in the community that we're in. You're able to partner with these people, so you're not reinventing the wheel, so you can get the information and overcome any obstacles by just kind of sharing and trading information. And that's the benefit of working in the higher education environment. There are the two grants that are still available. The COVID-19 Artificial Intelligence Chatbot Grant, I believe there's some time left on that. This is immediate deployment for immediate and quick response for the situation that we all found ourselves in back in March. So this should be an effective solution to help you respond to COVID and the pandemic situation. Then there is another grant available that's much more broad and applies to much broader applications in your institution. So definitely please take a look at these grants on the campusconsortium.org website. I want to thank my presenters and panelists today for all the insight and information. Any questions about the grants or any questions for the presenters, please contact Campus Consortium. Email me anytime. Happy to answer any questions. And to all the panelists and to all who attended across the United States, and I see many international people have attended too. Thank you for attending, and we will see you next time on a Campus Consortium EdTalk. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.